Some days are heavy. The weight of repeated effort presses down, and each action feels like a step in endless silence. You wonder why persist? What meaning lies in this repetition? The world seems indifferent, and your own energy feels spent, as if a part of you has quietly died, buried beneath monotony and expectation. And then, unexpectedly, you stumble upon words, texts, and stories, fragments of thoughts that stir something long dormant. A spark ignites, your breath deepens, your gaze sharpens, and life returns to corners of yourself. In that instant, the ordinary transforms. Labor becomes devotion, repetition becomes ritual, and monotony becomes a path towards meaning. And this is the moment Krasna seeks to capture in his Siobo There Below, the descent of the sacred into the rhythm of our own hands, and the quiet resurrection of purpose where we least expect it. Siobo, the goddess of immortality, is not a goddess in usual sense. She does not appear to grant wishes, command armies, or intervene in human affairs. She is a presence, a manifestation of the sacred, descending quietly into the world to touch human lives in fleeting, almost imperceptible. Her descent is not literal but symbolic. She appears in the acts of devotion, patience, and creation, in the hands of a sculptor who carves a Buddha, the dancer who repeats gestures for decades, the restorer who breathes life into the centuries old paintings. She comes to remind humanity that the sacred still exists, even in a world that feels indifferent, chaotic, or decayed. Siobo does not reward those who seek her or chase her. She appears to those who are ready, who have cultivated attention, patience, and humility. She descends so that ordinary acts like labor, art, devotion, quiet observation may become vessels of transcendence. In every vignette, she is both present and absent. She is felt in the echo of effort, in the pause before perfection is reached, in the transformation of human action into something luminous. Her purpose is not to change the world overtly, but to illuminate it, to show that beauty, grace, and sacred are woven into the mundane, waiting to be discovered by those willing to see. Krasna built a novel around that single miracle, how the eternal touches the temporal, how beauty appears in a gesture, a note of music, the still face of a statue, and then vanishes again. The book is not a story in the ordinary sense. It is moments, 17 attempts to hold what cannot be held. Each scene stands alone, yet each is bound to the others by a rhythm of breathing, repetition, and devotion. We begin in Kyoto. A no actor prepares behind a thin wooden screen. Outside, evening gathers, a faint scent of incense and cedar fills the air. He has been training for 50 years, and still, before every performance, he bows before the mirror. He paints his face in silence, white upon white, no expression, no emotion. Each stroke erases the man who paints. When the mask is fixed and a rope drawn tight, he no longer exists. Only the movements remain. The scene could belong to any age. It might be 600 years ago of this morning. Time has no authority here. What matters is the attention, the patience through which the divine is invited to appear. Krasnohorkai writes in sentences that flows without rest, as if the language itself were trying to imitate the endless of that devotion. There are no breaks, no reprieve, only the slow turning of perception upon itself, until we, the readers, become the mirror too. In the West, beauty is often treated as ornament, as pleasure, as something we either possess or lack. But in this book, beauty is not pleasure, it is discipline. It demands silence, time, and humility. The artist, the pilgrim, the observer, each must vanish a little. The new actor prepares not to express himself but to disappear. The icon painter in Florence breathes dust for years, restoring the face of a saint who may never have existed. The sculptor in Kyoto sands the wooden Buddha's eyelid 1,000 times until it feels like a breath. Beauty here is not invention but revelation. The sacred reveals itself into when we have stopped reaching for it. Philosophers from Plato to Simon whispered the same secret. Plato saw beauty as the visible form of the good, a memory of the divine world from which our soul once fell. Simon wrote that attention is the purest form of prayer, and Heidegger, standing before a Greek temple, said that the work of art is where being itself becomes visible. We live in an age terrified of slowness, but art requires a different kind of time, not chronological but devotional. Each brushstroke is a repetition of faith, to believe that the invisible can, for one moment, be seen. When Siopo descends, there are no words. The sacred never announces itself. It arrives as stillness, as a tremor of recognition that passes before we can describe it. We may glimpse it in the body of a dancer, in the stone eyes of a statue, in the flight of the crane that opened this meditation. The instant we speak, it is gone. And yet, it is a paradox of art. We keep speaking, we keep creating, to remember what can't be spoken. Krasnohorkai's sentences enact that paradox. They circle, they delay, they resist ending. Each comma is a breath of reverence. Reading him is like watching incense rise from dissolving into formlessness. To encounter beauty, one must learn to wait, to honor time, to bow before what is not ours to hold. The crane descends again, not to save, not to promise, but simply to remind us that the world, even if it's ruined, is still capable of grace. It is only through the most extreme attention that something beyond us might choose to appear. There are no gods in the modern world, yet Krasnohorkai shows us that devotion never died. It merely changed its forms. It lives now in the hands of those who work without glory, a painter restoring an icon, a craftsman chiseling a curve unseen by anyone, and a conservator brushing centuries from marble skin. Each gesture is a kind of prayer. Each repetition is a vow of patience. In one of the book's most haunting stories, a Hungarian art restorer labors alone on a Florentine masterpiece. His eyes burn, his back aches, but he continues, as if possessed by an invisible command. He knows he will never finish. He also knows he must not stop. What he restores is not merely pigment or surface, but the very possibility of the sacred appearing again. This is what Krasnohorkai calls infinite work, the work that can never be completed because what it seeks to reveal is infinite itself. It is not unlike Sisyphus, but Here, the labor is not punishment, it is faith, the act of waiting for beauty to re enter the world. To create beauty or to witness it, one must first learn to endure. The divine, when it descends, burns everything that is false. In this novel, the artist's suffering is sacred. Each mistake, each delay, each failure becomes a step towards purity. This idea carries echoes of Simon Weil's mysticism that beauty and affliction are twin revelations of the same truth. Weil said, all the natural movements of the soul are directed by the laws analogous to those of physical gravity. Grace is the exception. Krasznahorkai's character live by that gravity. They toil in the dark, knowing that grace will come only as exception, and even then only to those who have emptied themselves completely. The pain of waiting, the discipline of silence, the humility of service, these are the tools of their salvation. In this way, the artisan becomes philosopher. He embodies the idea that creation is not self-expression but self-erasure. To make something beautiful is to vanish in the process. Krasznahorkai's geography is spiritual, not political. We move across the earth, from Venice to Kyoto, from Budapest to Andalusia. But what connects these places is not culture or language. It is a single question repeated in 100 tongues. How does the sacred survive in a disenchanted world? In Japan, it hides in rituals, in the way the no actor bows before the mask, in the way Zen monk sweeps the courtyard before sunrise. In Europe, it hides in decay, in frescoes cracked by centuries, in cathedrals now filled more with tourists than with prayers. In both, there remains a longing to touch what cannot be touched, to feel that life, though fleeting, once shimmered with eternity. Krasznahorkai's prose itself mirrors this longing. The sentences stretch beyond breath, as if language itself were refusing to accept finitude. Reading him is like crossing an invisible bridge between the mortal and the eternal. In one of the most luminous chapters, a tourist stands before a statue of the Buddha at Nara. He does not know why he has come. He isn't religious, not even curious. He just drifts into the temple to escape the sun. And then, in that accidental moment, the air changes. He looks up, and for a heartbeat, he forgets himself. The immense calm of Buddha's face enters him like light through water. He does not understand it, but he knows he has been seen. This is the essence of this book, the moment when the sacred chooses to appear, not because we deserve it, but because it chooses to descend. We cannot summon grace, we can only prepare for it. This is the same metaphysical insight found in Kafka, whose characters wait endlessly for the inaccessible castle, and in Dostoevsky, whose saints suffer without hope of reward. For Krasznahorkai, however, the revelation is quieter. It comes not in visions or miracles, but in the stillness between two movements, the pause of the actor and the curve of the brush, the instant before a bird takes the flight. Siobo herself, the goddess, appears only once, and even then only as light. She descends upon the world briefly, illuminating it without changing it. She leaves no message, no comfort, only the unbearable knowledge that the sacred is still possible. In that single descent lies the tragedy of modern life. We are capable of holiness, but we no longer believe in it. The goodness returns to her heavens, and the world resumes the noise, the haste, and the forgetting. But those who witness her carry a secret brightness in their eyes, as if the world, despite its decay, still holds a pulse of eternity. She descended, And all at once it became clear that beauty is not what we create, but what we are permitted to witness. So, why does this book matter today? Because we live in an age that confuses visibility with value. Everything must be shown, consumed, posted, proved. But Krasna reminds us that the most meaningful things are invisible, slow, and silent. The divine has not vanished, it has only grown shy. It hides in ordinary acts of care. A craftsman sanding the same piece of wood for years, a dancer repeating the same steps until it becomes prayer, a reader who still believes that language can carry light. In this sense, Krasna is not merely a novelist, but a moral philosopher for a tired world. He teaches that art, when done with devotion, is not entertainment but salvation. And perhaps the sacred never left us. Perhaps it waits, patient, behind every face, beneath every act of care, beneath every word we still mean. The goddess descends again, not into temples, but into the silence of the reader's heart. Krasna world is full of people who see too much. So, what does it mean to see? Not to glance, not to consume, but to see in such a way that the world looks back. Everywhere there was beauty, and nowhere was it noticed. To see beauty is not to be comforted by it, but it is to be wounded by it, because beauty exposes what the world could be and reminds us what it has become. The Buddha statue, the no actor, the woman walking under Venetian light, each image contains eternity folded within a moment. And when the moment passes, we are left with the unbearable weight of grace. That is why the title insists, Siubo, there below. The goddess descends, but she never stays. Grace touches, and then it withdraws. We are left to live with the echo. Krasna is not writing about religion, not in dogmatic sense. There is no priest, no faith, no scripture. Yet, this novel is one of the most profoundly spiritual works of our times. He belongs to a lineage of writers, Kafka, Beckett, and Dostoevsky, for whom the sacred persists even after God has departed. They do not deny transcendence. They simply portray a world where transcendence has grown quiet. In such a world, holiness hides in the cracks of daily life. To make art is to become a monk without a monastery, a pilgrim without a shrine. The task, then, is not belief, but attention, to attend to the world so fully that its hidden divinity begins to flicker again. This is what the philosopher Martin called I, thou encounter, when we face the world not as object but as presence. Krasna artisans live entirely within this mode of attention. They do not look at beauty, they are looked through by it. Every page of this novel is a meditation on devotion without guarantee. The artist restores the fresco that no one may ever see. The no actor perfects a role whose meaning may never be understood. The tourist glimpses enlightenment for an instant, then returns to anonymity. They work, they wait, they endure, not because they expect reward, but because devotion itself has become their way of being. Here lies Krasna existential message. Even in an absurd and indifferent universe, one can live meaningfully through care. This echoes Camus, who said that we must imagine Sisyphus happy. But in Krasna the labor is not rebellion, it is reverence. Where Camus' hero affirms absurd, Krasna artisan bow before it. They accept that beauty will never last, and in that acceptance, they become part of something eternal. Here, we must know that Krasna is not naive. He knows that the experience of the sacred isolates as much as it redeems. Those who have seen grace cannot easily return to ordinary life. Like mystics after revelation, they carry a silence that others cannot hear. The artisan, the pilgrim, the reader, each must live with the paradox of knowing what cannot be spoken. The novelist himself seems aware of this burden. His prose is both gift and exile, each sentence a way of reaching towards what forever retreats. This is why the novel feels both luminous and melancholic. It affirms that the sacred exists but only in fleeting moments that cannot be preserved. We may restore paintings, rebuild temples, but the divine light that once filled them belongs to time, not to us. The moral, then, is humility. To love beauty is to love something that will always leave you. So, what then? The descent mean to us, citizens of the digital era, a distracted age? Perhaps she descends every day in small gestures we overlook, a stranger's kindness, a sudden silence amid noise, a glimpse of light through glass. Perhaps art is not a possession of the few, but a way of seeing that is available to all. To live artistically in Krasnohorkai's sense is not to create masterpieces, but to move through the world with reverence, to bow before the ordinary as if it were holy. This is the heart of this moral philosophy. The sacred is not elsewhere, it is here, if we have the patience to see it. Beauty had not abandoned the world, we had abandoned the act of looking. Imagine for a moment the new actor stepping onto the stage, his face a perfect mask, his movement slower than breath. He turns, the air shivers, and for a heartbeat, everyone watching feels the presence of something beyond expression. Then it passes. He bows, the light fades, and the audiences leave. But that moment, that single, unamiable moment stays. It stays like the faint scent of incense after prayer, like the afterglow of sunlight on stone. That is Siobo, the descent of grace into the mortal world. The reminder that in the midst of our noise and haste, there is still room for wonder. Do not look for heaven above, Krasnohorkai seems to whisper, for it has already descended. It waits beneath your ordinary life, in the motion of your hands, in the breath of your waiting. Siobo is there, below. I used to think that descent meant falling, a collapse, a failure, a slow surrender to what drags us down. But now I see it differently. Maybe descent is grace in disguise, the divine lowering itself into the dust of our exhaustion, into our endless screens, our half-lived mornings, our hurried breaths between deadlines and doubts. Maybe it is not the gods who descend, but the moments, the fleeting silences when something greater than us brushes against our small routines. A stranger's gesture, a line of music, the light falling on a cracked wall at dusk. We don't notice it at first. We are too busy chasing permanence. But sometimes, just for an instant, the world stops being ordinary. And in that stillness, the sacred slips quietly below. And that, perhaps, is what Siobo there below really means. That even in a tired modern world, beauty still descends, softly, briefly, mercifully, to remind us that not all is lost. And the world remembers that even in its ruin, it is still capable of grace. The world may never grow easier. Our efforts may often dissolve into repetition, but if beauty can still descend even once, even briefly, then perhaps there is still hope for us, still meaning in the endless act of becoming. Perhaps this is all we have ever been searching for, Not certainty, not perfection, but that one fleeting moment.